I wanted to write a story that would embrace a lot of the stories that I had been writing about as a journalist. I wanted to write about what happens when a kid is vulnerable and has nothing to fall back on. Moshe, I don't know if a single word he told me was true. I have no idea. The whole thing could have been a ploy to get a free meal. I don't know. But I will tell you that for 30 years he haunted me. And he is the protagonist in my book.
We have a very, very special guest here. We have someone who I've known probably for 20 plus years. I'll explain why in a second. Her name is Susie Rosenbluth, who is from our core readership from Englewood and also Summers and Bradley Beach. But Susan, in my mind, you are known for being the longtime publisher of the Jewish Voice and Opinion, okay?
Correct.
And I'll just tell you something. You coined a term with that publication that always rang through my mind, and I think the term was it was representing classical Judaism.
Correct.
And I remember we had a discussion about it years ago. But our readers may not all be familiar with the Jewish Voice and Opinion, so it really I want to hear the Susan Rosenbluth origin story. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and we're here. Just for everyone to know, we're here because you have now moved beyond publishing, and you are now you're about to become a debut novelist.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that. But so Mazel Tov on the book, Blurred Vision. It's not. We don't have it yet. I wish I was kind of holding it here.
No.
But
I'll give you a picture.
Maybe we can edit it in later. But I definitely want to see it. I'm looking forward to it. And let's hear about Susan.
The Jewish Voice and Opinion was a brainchild that I'd been thinking about many, many years before I actually opened it in 87 actually, the end of 87. And I did it because after several years working in what I call the secular Jewish media, I realized that the Jewish community, the non-Orthodox community, liked the Orthodox community just fine, as long as we were singing and dancing. When we sang and danced, and you had old men who would pontificate on the Torah, or Jewish grandmothers baking, they loved us. Now, when we had something to say, they didn't love us quite so much anymore.
Because we didn't always agree.
We usually disagreed. We usually came with a different opinion from a whole different place. Not to say completely, because back in the 80s, it was a much more cohesive community.
And smaller, by the way, as well.
Smaller and more cohesive. I used to laugh. I think it was in the mid 80s at a Solidarity Sunday event. Solidarity
Sure.
Sunday was used for those of us who were working everything we could to free Soviet Jewry.
Yep.
Solidarity Sunday. And all of a sudden, I realized how different things had come in 5 years. 5 years earlier, Solidarity Sunday, you would see just as many bareheaded men as kippah-covered men. You would see women who didn't cover their hair at all, women who did. And all of a sudden, by the late 80s, it changed. Solidarity Sunday had become an observant Jewish community event. Now, within that, there are lots of, I don't have to tell you, there are
Sure.
lots of gradients. That's not to say other people were told not to come. It's just that we were the ones who were still there. Look at the Israel Day Parade. The Israel Day Parade was supposed to be, always was, you didn't have to be
Correct.
observant to come. You look to see what has happened there. Yes, you'll have a float from Hadassah, and then you'll have 8 blocks of yeshiva this and
That's
yeshiva
right.
that.
Yeah, majority Orthodox, yeah.
You go look at the people who are watching, lining the streets. There are very few bareheads. There are some, but not many. And this became an increasingly true phenomenon, and it like in the mid '90s, Oslo, it just exploded.
But wait, hold on. But let's get back. So you were writing, and then you started in '88, though.
I was starting before that writing for secular Jewish newspapers.
Which ones?
Jewish Standard. Did some for the Jewish Week. When the New York Times had a New Jersey section, I did a lot of their stories that were about the Jewish community.
You were a stringer for the New York Times.
I was indeed.
Wow.
And for the
I forgot that. I didn't know that.
No, for the in their Jersey section, which doesn't exist anymore. It was a very good way of getting some of the stories that we needed to get out. I was one of the first people who did a story on Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Oh, wow, sure.
Well, he was doing Jews for Judaism. And I remember when I came out and did it, they were like, who knew about it? And he was so pleased because he said, the minute we get it out at all, someone's going to call me because they need it desperately.
And they did.
And they did.
By the way, I happen to like the irony that one of that story, because that's actually about some of the topic of your book as well, anti-cults.
Yes, exactly so. By 1988, I realized we really needed a voice. When I say we, classical Judaism, I will take that meaning everything from as modern Orthodox to where right-wing conservative might be, all the way up, however you want to do it, to those.
Other words I like to use are committed, observant. Those
people who can daven together.
Got it.
To me, what we're talking about are people, you get 10 men, and we're going to have a minyan because these are 10 men who know they're going to understand what siddur they're using. They can daven together. We may have different hashkafas on what is kosher and what is not kosher, but we basically agreed what kosher is. Right. And it was something that I think earlier lots of people knew, whether they went to shul or didn't go to shul. When they talked about being Jewish, we all knew what they meant. It started to change. And the Jewish Voice and Opinion was an idea that I had.
And at this time, you're a young mother living in North Jersey, in Englewood?
I was a young mother already living in Englewood, actually, by the 80s, in Englewood. I had worked for the Jewish Standard.
And you graduated college knowing you wanted to be a writer?
I graduated from college knowing I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
I majored in French and Spanish because NYU didn't have a comparative literature program, and if they would have left me alone, I would have been happy to sit somewhere and read. I mean, I was very happy reading. I did teach because I had a husband who was in medical school, and I taught elementary school, and you could have taken, I think, half his graduating class, and that's where we all were. I went into writing because it gave me a bigger classroom. I love teaching. People would often ask me, why are your articles so long? And I would say, because
my editors have asked me the same thing.
Yeah, so. I mean, and it's because I have lots of things I want to teach. I've had people ask me, why do you only take one perspective? The Jewish Voice and Opinion was a proudly politically conservative publication. And people would say, why are you giving that perspective? And I said, if I thought for 1 minute the Jewish Voice and Opinion was the only thing you were reading, I'd have to give you the right wing, the left wing, over the hills and under the sea. I'd have to give you all of it. I am so sure you are reading other things. We are the other side. I trust you enough to take both sides and form your own opinion. Moshe, a rule of thumb, never underestimate your audience's intelligence. Never overestimate their information. They depend on you for the information. They have the intelligence to know what to do with it. Give it to them. What is it, that wonderful story from the Talmud about the fire in the school, and kids ran to the rabbis and they said, Rabbi, we have to wake everybody up. There's a fire. We have to carry them to safety. We have to get them out. And the rabbi said, no, wake the Jews up and they'll save themselves. My feeling is that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. we are waking the Jewish community up. Here is the situation. You can do lots of things. We have enough organizations, sometimes duplicating each other.
Yep.
We have enough organizations. You can do something. You must do something.
So in '88, you decided that it was time to really to create something real.
And who pushed me over the edge?
Tell me.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Wow.
I was taken by Yisrael Brod, who was the head of Friends of Lubavitch of Bergen County at the time, when he knew I wanted to do this one. I had been working at this point for a paper called the Bergen Jewish News, which was a ridiculous experiment done by the Federation. I don't want to think about the amount of money that was thrown into a project that could not succeed because they wouldn't let it. But I was working for them, and when I went to work for them, in fact, I told them that if all they were going to do was do the same thing as the Jewish Standard, which at that point could not be counted on for being pro-Israel, not a matter of it just taking different religious perspectives. And the idea of the Federation coming out with a paper that was going to be pro-Israel was very attractive to me. That's why I went to work for it. And they did do that. It's just that they didn't know how to run a paper and were not particularly interested in learning how. So it disappeared.
And you were the editor-in-chief, staff writer?
I was not the editor-in-chief. I was their chief writer. I wrote under 3 names. When I wrote a serious piece that I was proud of, it was Susan Rosenbluth.
Okay.
When I wrote a piece for because it was essentially a house organ, about someone who was giving money to the Federation and doing something, I wrote under Susan Richards. My husband's name is Richard, so I was Susan Richards.
That's funny.
And when I wrote something about someone having a hat show somewhere, it was S. Levin, which is my maiden name. Figured it was, when you use an initial, they figure it's a guy. So it was some guy we had hanging around the office.
That's funny.
And people asked me if I wrote differently for all 3 personas. I said, I wish I were that talented. No. So many people actually understood what was happening. But it was very interesting when I was taken to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. First of all, I was astounded that in such a short amount of time, whoever gave him information, he knew everything he knew what I had been doing. He knew why I wanted to open this. I mean, he had it at his fingertips. And when I told him that I wanted, by design, not to do anything that would encourage anybody to be Machal Shabbos, to desecrate the Sabbath or desecrate the holidays. I said, it hasn't been done. Even there weren't that many Orthodox papers at the time at all. I mean, there was the Jewish press, and they famously said, consult your local Orthodox rabbi. I wanted our paper to be like our own Good Housekeeping seal of approval. We used as our advisory board, unofficially, the Rabbinical Council of Bergen County. I didn't take any ad that there was a question about ran through usually Rabbi Genack, basically not saying should we take it, because he wouldn't have said yes you should or you shouldn't. He wouldn't have put himself in that position, but to say, hey, all right, Rabbi, I'm one of your congregants. Can I eat there?
Right. We follow a similar policy today.
Right.
Yeah.
I know it. You know that at the time they said it can't be done. It cannot be done.
So they thought you were crazy. They
thought I was crazy. People at the Jewish Standard accused me of hating non-religious Jews because I wouldn't take treif advertising. And I said, no, I love them. I don't hate them. I want them to join me. But I was accused of that. And the Rebbe said something very interesting to me. He said, the enemies of Klal Yisrael are going to try to destroy us with their pens. And where are our pens? Go, he said, be a pen.
Wow, I like that. That was his bracha.
That was his bracha.
I love that. I didn't know that. Wow.
So I took it very seriously, obviously. And for 35 years, the Jewish Voice and Opinion operated, and it didn't take trafe advertising, and we didn't take anything that would encourage anybody to desecrate the Sabbath or the holidays. In fact, I would often tell advertisers, why would you want to offend people gratuitously? I mean, there's no point in it.
Right.
And I take that out. Don't. I understand you have a show on Saturday afternoon. Don't tell our people about it.
Yeah, I do that. We do it all the time. By the way,
Take it out.
We take it out.
Yeah, leave it out. You can tell them when they call. I mean, I'm not telling you to cancel the show. I'm telling you that here it's only going to put people off. And why would you want to do that?
Yep. Wow. So you started in '88, and you lit 30 years, and it was always a monthly, correct?
A monthly, because I have a wife and mother and had other things. We ran it as a weekly that came out once a month.
I like that.
In other words, we tried to make sure that what we had in was current, that it was something that hadn't, been an issue 3 weeks ago and then died 2 weeks ago. It was no longer an issue. We wanted it to be something that was happening. We operated with 4 women, 4 of us. That was it. I still wrote 90% of the paper. We got other people to contribute sometimes.
Did you use pseudonyms again also?
No, there it was mine. It was mine. We had Sharon Beck, who was our. She took care of dragging me kicking and screaming into the 21st century, because we put it out digitally so that it could be done. Before that, I go back to the time when we were using boards.
Wow.
It came out and they had a person typesetting and
sure.
And Rifki Stern did our advertising, and
she's an advertiser of ours to this day.
Yes, Rifki, and she's marvelous, wonderful graphic designer, and then we had bookkeeping and whatever, but that was it. And I used to say for a while, when the advertising department wanted to talk to editorial, I got into bed and talked to myself.
So when I came onto the scene, okay, I'm in the community now 20 plus years.
Right.
I knew you were out there, and I enjoyed what you published. My vision of the Jewish League was always to many ways to have the same role, the same space that you were. I just wanted to be more. Like, I wanted to do a little bit more. So.
When you came out, it was like, if I had been maybe 30 years younger, it was a revelation. It was like, we can do it. Look what we have. The idea was that you didn't have to have a version for Connecticut or Riverdale or South Jersey, because what happens to the Jewish community in Connecticut is of interest to us in Bergen County, New Jersey.
We're all connected, by the way. Big lesson I've learned. We're connected. We are.
If a Jew gets hurt in Argentina, they bleed in Atlantic City.
Agreed. That's right.
We are one people, and boy, have we been proving it. And the wonderful communication skills that we have now, the technology, which is not a curse, it's a blessing. It gets us together. I remember, shortly before I started the Jewish Voice and Opinion, when Ronald Reagan had to go to Reykjavik to meet Gorbachev.
Sure.
And it was very important for the Jewish community to let him know, hey, listen, you're going to go there. We have a real stake in this.
Correct.
We have Jews that have to be protected, and you cannot forget about them.
Right.
We had, 48 hours to get a rally in Washington, and because we had the American Jewish Press Association, because we had the Federation, we were able to do it. They were expecting maybe 1,000 Jews to show up, and that was going to be a big deal. They gave us a room and whatever. We had 10,000 Jews show up. So much so that when Reagan met with him, he talked about our issue, and he talked about the plight of Soviet Jewry. It was because he said, look, these are my people, and they're demanding it. And
it worked.
And it worked. How much more so do we have it now? I was so glad to see that you were part of the American Jewish Press Association, because I think that with papers like The Link there, and I know how much in awe they are of The Link, which is wonderful.
They're shocked by how big we are.
I mean, they are shocked by it, and they're impressed by it, and those who are intelligent enough to see what they're watching have said to me, "We ignore it at our peril." And I said, "Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It is no longer where I'm going to try to get out." I mean, I was very happy if we put out 40 pages a month. If we put out 80 pages a month, it was a nice big paper. And it was great. It was terrific because we had identified an important niche that had to get its voice out. And then you came and you just took it to a level that I had only dreamed of. I mean, I shep such nachas with every single issue you come out. It's like, I don't mean this to sound patronizing, and I'm afraid it does, because I don't want it to sound patronizing.
Go ahead.
It was an idea that I had. I'm older. You saw it, and you just ran with it. And what you guys have done is, you just have to look and see I'm sure you do, the difference. I mean, the standard is still there.
Yep.
They still come out. I don't think that there's no comparison. The paper for our community, the paper for the Orthodox Jewish community, and by Orthodox, I'm using that in as wide a catch and net as I can. Maybe I would say Orthodox and fellow travelers, people who shep nachas right along with us. Right. Is that we are the paper of record. Yeah. Others are welcome to come. You have other people reading it. My goodness.
Sure.
But this is who we are.
Can I just say thank you because I was a upstart. I was a startup. I was shaking things up. I'm sure it wasn't easy in a sense to see my paper on a certain level. Like I kind of felt like in many ways I was doing the work that you really want. I sensed I was doing a little bit what you wanted to do, I want you to know I never once ever I never got a negative word from you. You always gave me ma'ava and love, and I want you to know that I appreciate it. So.
Oh my gosh! My feeling was that if anything, and maybe younger, I would have said, "Hey, how do I invest in this with you? Let me come in here with you." There were other things I was doing at the time. I have, Kenai 3 married children, 13 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, 1, please God, on the way. And I was not in a position to say, I didn't want a deadline like that anymore. But to watch it, the fear of what we had done, someone either doing no more or probably less, because I don't think anybody would have had to do it as a monthly the way I was, might not have had the commitment that I had to a monthly. So I think that was not what I was looking for, to see someone do it on a weekly basis and have it explode like that. And I mean that as an explosion in the best way possible, a blossoming. It's just, oh wow, it's fantastic. And you guys should be so proud of yourselves that I wouldn't know how to do it. You are an ornament to the Jewish community. Without you, we would be less than we are.
Well, thank you. I'm actually about to tear up here, so I appreciate it.
Tear up.
I also want to say thank you, by the way. I love it when I get an email from you.
Maybe I never want to say, here's an article. No. I hope you like it, baby.
Really, the last few years, I think a theme of a lot of your articles has been culture. Hey, Moshe, saw this wonderful play with a really special Holocaust, Zionist, some kind of really pro-Jewish, strong Jewish message. And I want you to know that we've been happy. I know that you put them online as well. They're always on Jewish Voice and Opinion online, which is great. And by the way, the Jewish Voice and Opinion still lives online.
Yes, it does. I'm surprisingly. I was just informed that we hit like 2,500 hits a day, and I was like, wow.
So that's great. But I'm saying I feel privileged to that once you finish putting it on your own site, that you say, hey, Moshe, I think this would be great. And by the way, I appreciate it that you say, hey, just publish this. It's always like, I don't think I've ever turned you down, or maybe I haven't.
Listen, nobody knows better than I when they talk about what you can put in a paper. When the New York Times used to say, all the news that's fit to print, what we have to say, because we have financial, all the news that fits.
I like that. By the way, that is I like that, and all the news that fits. Okay, so now.
In the 80s, first, when I started it when it was at the Bergen Jewish News, because actually it started at the Jewish Standard. I got asked to do an article to interview a family in Teaneck because they had an interesting story. What was their story? This was a nice Jewish family, certainly not but identifiably Jewish, and they had 3 kids, like all Jewish families. One was brighter than the next, all accomplished. And their third was like the creme de la creme. First in his class at Teaneck High School, when parents, they still are, by the way. I'm always surprised
smaller
to
numbers,
find out.
But
yes, Teaneck, he was first in his class, was accepted to a fine Ivy League school, and he went. And, of course, for the first time in his life, he was not the best and the brightest. They were all the
Similar.
best and the brightest. This was his really first time away from home without counselors and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He was on his own. And his parents realized early in the game that he wasn't happy. But they'd been through this before. He was their third, and they figured he'll adjust, he'll be fine, he'll get used to it. By Thanksgiving, he was gone, missing. And nobody knew where he was. The police were called in, the schools, they looked. There was no evidence whatsoever of foul play. His roommate said, didn't know his roommate that well. I mean, they roomed together. They weren't they weren't buddies. His roommate didn't know. Had he been a frum kid, by definition, he would have had to have been somewhere on Friday nights.
More people would have known about him.
There would have been grown-ups, Chabad, Hillel.
Something.
Someone he would have been davening. If he's a frum kid, if he's not putting on tefillin every day, maybe he's putting on tefillin.
People might have noticed.
There would have been people. Someone would have said, yes, I didn't see him. He didn't come to dinner Friday night. Nobody knew anything. And what the police told the family was, look, he's over 18. If he wants to disappear himself, he has that right. Well, his parents disagreed. No, he doesn't, as we all would. And they hired a private investigator, and they found him. He had joined the Moonies. He had become a Moonie. Now, he was a bright kid, so he was not just a Moonie selling flowers on the street. He was running one of their businesses. The Moonies were a dangerous group. Because
still out there, I think.
Yeah, they certainly are. Not in those numbers, but they were parents who would try to get their children back, were kept from their children. You try to kidnap your child, and if they caught you, they would sue you. They would fund the lawsuit that the child would perpetrate against the parents. They bankrupted some parents. They were a very litigious group. And but this family did manage to kidnap their child. They did manage to have him deprogrammed.
Rabbi Singer was involved?
Rabbi Singer was not involved, but there were other people involved. As I said, they had not gotten him. He was very much involved with other people, and people, I think, he probably would have done, I think, a better job. Because when I met this kid, this young man, Moshe, something was wrong. Something was very, very off with this kid. He was home, but where he was going and what he was doing was very much up in the air.
It's amazing. He was there by Thanksgiving. He was a Moonie and had just left his house in
He had left his house in September. By Thanksgiving, he was a Moonie.
That's wild.
Think they didn't get him back for several months later. And I started looking, how is this possible? I mean, the doctrine, the theology for the Moonies is crazy. That a fat South Korean businessman was Mashiach ben David. I mean,
that's the concept.
That's the concept. There we are. I'm not going to tell you that frum kids we don't have our problems in the frum community. Of course we do. When our kids go off the derech, they don't tend to believe in Mashiach being a Korean businessman.
Correct.
I mean, that's not where they go. But we do have Jewish kids, if we believe they're all ours. The non-frum community, oh my God. The Moonies were 30 to 40% Jewish. There was a book, I can't remember the author, it was a nonfiction book done by a journalist called Moonwebs. Moonwebs was the story, it actually was a Canadian family whose child got involved in how people worked to try to get him out. That book became a movie called Ticket to Heaven.
Oh, I think I heard that.
Ticket to Heaven.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's available on YouTube or wherever. It is worth seeing. They kept the Jewish element. But of course, the important thing here is the non-frum element. Why do I say it's important? I started doing the research.
Lack of identity, lack of strong Jewish identity.
Sometimes they even had Jewish identity. We forget that the Jewish community, Judaism, Jews, are a two-pronged organism. We are a community, we are a people, of course, but we are also a faith. We are a religion, and one does not survive without the other. You try to be a people without the faith, that's a body without a spirit, that's a corpse. You want to talk about being a faith without the body? That's a ghost. You need both. And what do we know about all human beings? We know that the human animal is hardwired for spirituality. There has never been a human society without a spiritual factor. You go to the caves in northern France, and you see the pictures on the cave walls. They were not trying to duplicate nature. They were propitiating some kind of a greater spirit for the continuation of the hunt. There was a spiritual aspect to their society, every society. Sometimes that part of human nature is called the God hole. We are built with a God hole.
Yeah, I've heard that term, yes.
What fits in there? Well, if we're frum, we say
Hashem,
Hashem fits right in there. If I wanted to be a little bit more universal, I would say fill it with something good. Fill it with something nurturing. I think the rabbis might say fill it with truth. And when you are vulnerable, which we all have periods in our lives when we are vulnerable, especially a young person going off on his or her own for the first time without anything to fall back on. There are times, this kid said what was his most vulnerable problem, what made him the girl he was interested wouldn't date him. She won't date me. And there was nowhere to fall back. So what you have is you have people who can smell out the vulnerable. Great people readers, some of them would be terrific therapists if they went that way. Use it for something good, and goodness knows what they could have accomplished. Instead, it went somewhere else.
So you've been thinking about these ideas since the mid-1980s about cults.
And one of the best analogies, metaphors that I was given for it was if we think about it from Tanakh, from the story of Joseph and his brothers. He's thrown into a pit, and what are we told? The pit was empty and it had no water. And of course, which sounds like a redundancy. If it was empty, then of course it had no water. we know that there are no extra words. So give this kind of a conundrum to the rabbis, and you can get lots and lots of material.
There are a few.
And what do they tell us? They tell us it was empty only of water. What is water? It is the symbol of Torah, symbol of God, Torah. And if it is empty of that, into that void creep snakes and scorpions, which is as good a metaphor as I've ever heard for the destructive cults. And that's what I wanted to write about. And I figured the best way to do that was not by writing nonfiction. I had an awful lot of information about cults, and I had Tuvia Singer was marvelous, Chabad was terrific. I wanted to write a story that would embrace a lot of the stories that I had been writing about as a journalist. I wanted to write about what happens when a kid is vulnerable and has nothing to fall back on. And these love bombers, people who will come to them and say, oh, you're fantastic. Your teachers just don't know how great you are. Your parents never appreciated you. The girl who won't date you can't see. We see. Come to us. And this all-embracing, to feel that you're part of something bigger than you are, which, of course, we get all the time in shul.
Right.
You're part of something bigger than you are. And what you do affects Klal Yisrael. But you didn't have that growing up, if you didn't have it growing up.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to write about.
So that's Blurred Vision.
That is Blurred Vision.
And so first of all, how long did it take you to write? Give us the basic plot, and did you and how many times did you rewrite it?
Well, I should say that another issue that I had written about as a journalist, and I think you'll appreciate why I wrote about it, was also something that I wanted to work in and did work it into the novel Blurred Vision. There was an incident, which you may or may not, I'm sure you do remember. I guess it was in the 90s. There were two Jewish mothers living in the apartment complex right near where we're sitting, and who were looking out onto the courtyard, and there were some African-American teenagers fooling around, and one of the mothers was pretty sure she saw a gun. She called the police, and the police came. Maybe if this were New York, one car would have come. It's Teaneck, we're a small town.
2 or 3, yeah.
4.
4.
And, of course, the kids scrambled. One started climbing up the terraces, reached into his jacket, and a young cop was pretty sure he saw the gun. And from the angle, he told him to stop. The kid didn't stop. The kid was turning. Yeah. The policeman shot him and killed him. Obviously there was an inquiry, and in the inquiry the policeman was found that it was a clean shoot. The kid was in fact reaching for the gun, and he was exonerated. And there was a lot to do about it.
Of course, a documentary about it as well.
Right.
Sure.
And it was not my story. In order to get into the Jewish Voice, there had to be some kind of a Jewish angle. I needed a place to hang my Jewish hat. Otherwise, it could be a great story. Belongs in the Record. Belonged in the Suburbanite. Our real estate was limited, and it had to have a Jewish angle, or I had to find one. And there was none here. There just was none. But I got asked by a very, very good advertiser who came to me and said, could you please do me a favor and interview the cop? I think they were choir boys together. It's not my story. Please. For him, yes. Well, I did interview him. And I will tell you, Moshe, that cop broke my heart. He was young, and he was well aware that he'd been exonerated. He was well aware he'd been declared a clean shoot. But he said, at the end of the day, I killed a 16-year-old. And when I try to wrap my head around what I would do differently next time, I come up blank. How can I continue doing this? And realized we may want to find a villain in this story, and I'm not comparing this policeman's tragedy to the family that lost a child. I mean, my God. But I think if we want to look for maybe the villain is who gave a 16-year-old a gun and who let that kid get a hold of it. Maybe that's a whole different story. But I could see this policeman's hands were still shaking. I wanted to do something weaving in the post-traumatic stress that some of our first responders have and that they are people. So that is part. Because when I did the interview, what went through my head is what would have happened if this policeman had been Jewish? What would have our reaction been? What would have the reaction been?
And in the book, one of the policemen is Jewish, correct?
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think there's two partners in the book, correct?
There are two partners in the book. Mm-hmm. One, I wanted very much in the book to show the difference.
Not going to give it all away. Sorry.
No. I wanted in the book to show the difference between mainstream religion, whether we're talking about Christianity or Judaism, or those are the two I took. It could have been any. It could have been another. Between that and cults, what is the difference? It's been told that one man's cult is another man's religion. I was in court when Mattie Feldman's bill, which was back in the 80s, Senator Mattie Feldman was trying to get a bill into the legislature about if a family realizes that a member might be ensnared in a cult, then one of the close family members would have the right to obtain guardianship over the individual for 30 days to see if he can be helped. After 30 days, an adult could go back to the cult. The chief opponent to this was the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU fought tooth and nail against it, and the ACLU won. And I was in court when the ACLU presented an argument, and they presented an argument presenting a cult, they said. They called the cult Tenevnak. Oh, they said Tenevnak is a cult made up of women. The women go into this cult. They have their heads shaved. They wear burlap. They sleep on hard pallets. They give up all their worldly possessions. Often they're placed into this group by their parents who encourage them to be there. The leader is someone they call mother, who can tell them to do anything. And they turned and they said, "What do you think of this cult?" And it sounds terrible. Tenevnak is convent, spelled backwards. We're not going to call the Catholic Church a cult, and it isn't a cult. People are going in of their own volition, and there's a long time period, and they do stay in touch with their families. But these were the kinds of incidents that I was following. My notes had notes, and during COVID, our family had a tragedy. We lost a grandchild to leukemia. And I didn't want to write about any kind of fictional story dealing with myself at all. And as I said, I had so many notes on cults. My notes had notes, and I decided to go back to it. So
you had started it, or you?
I had sort of plotted it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I had worked out a storyline, and then I went back and worked more seriously on it. And
novel writing is different than
very
journalism.
Different. What is the biggest difference?
You don't know how it ends.
Even if you plot it out,
yeah.
The biggest difference.
Dialogue.
Sometimes we write stories for in the newspaper. We don't know how they're going to end either.
It's
we
true.
know how this particular article will end.
Right.
We don't know what's going to happen down the pike. We learn in journalism that one of the things that we stay away from as much as we can are adjectives and adverbs, because they give our perspective on what is happening. If we stick to nouns and verbs in our stories, then we're telling what happened. If I start putting in, something about how hopeless someone feels, and I'm giving that internality of one of the people, I'm crossing, I'm crossing the fourth wall.
Yep.
Now that there is a place for that. There's a place for that certainly in opinions, which belong in a newspaper. There are places for that in a feature where you may want to do that. I'm not saying there's no place for it, but in straight journalism, we're going to tell you what the story is. We're going to give you just the facts, and then we're going to let you make up your own mind about what is happening, which is why you get such wonderful letters to the editor. But in a novel, I want you to know where the protagonist is. I want you to know. We wouldn't dream of letting you know what the character in one might, what a person in an article I'm writing, what he's thinking. I only know what he's saying. But in a novel, I know what he's thinking. I know what his motivation is, and I thought that was important. And I wanted it for this story. I wanted it to have what would happen. We all know that from the Holocaust, there were people. They ran a whole range, a whole spectrum of how people came out from the Holocaust, how survivors came out. There are survivors who came out bound and determined that they were not going to be the last link in a chain, not going to grant Hitler posthumous victories. We're going to continue, and as a mark of pride. There are other people who said there is no God, and maybe the Jews are his people, but there is no God. I don't want any more fairy tales. It's fairy tales that led to 6 million dead Jews and 50 million dead others. And what if you had a Holocaust survivor from that end who was bound and determined to raise a child to be a humanist without faith? And that child, bright, sure, found herself in school, alone, in college, outstripped in sophistication by others, vulnerable. What happens? And what happens when they are in the cult and they have children? And that came from maybe the last story that I will give you, because this is a true story. I was working on these articles, and I got a call from a friend who was a journalist writing for the Village Voice at the time. And she was doing a story on Covenant House, which was a quasi-Catholic organization that looked for runaway kids in Port Authority. In the 80s, Port Authority was a place you didn't want to go.
That's correct.
Overridden with drugs. Someone said 2,000 reported crimes every year, and God alone knows how many unreported.
Wow.
Terrible place. She called me. She said, "You're doing work on Jews and cults?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Get down here to Port Authority. You can thank me later." So I went, and I found my friend standing at the information desk with a young man, 14, 15, I don't think he was 16, maybe. And she introduced me to him, and she tells me he's a runaway from a terrible cult called Children of God. We can talk about it later, but a terrible cult. And he had left his mother there. He would run away. He was living on the streets in New York, mostly living in Port Authority, and making his living selling his body. Okay. He knew his mother was Jewish, and he knew that meant he was Jewish. Yeah. And she said, "I thought you might want to interview him." I said, "Yes, I would very much like to interview you." And he said, great. He was more than willing. He wanted only one thing, Moshe. He wanted a kosher meal. The kid is selling his body, and he wants a kosher meal. "Yes, I will take you for a kosher meal." I took him to Lou Siegel's.
Sure.
We went to Lou Siegel's, and while we were eating and talking, and I'm listening, and I finally said to him, I said, you don't have to stay out here on the streets of New York alone and unprotected. I know people who would not only give you a kosher home, but would deem it a privilege to do so. Would you like to come back to New Jersey with me? He wanted to think about it. I said, that's reasonable. We made an appointment to meet the next day, and he never showed up. I did go to the police, and they looked at me and laughed. Do you know how many runaways we have here? Moshe, I don't know if a single word he told me was true. I have no idea. The whole thing could have been a ploy to get a free meal. I don't know. But I will tell you that for 30 years he haunted me. And he is the protagonist in my book.
That one incident, it stayed with you.
Oh, my God, yes.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I guess now I'm looking forward to reading it. I don't want to give it all away, but first of all, this is great. You put your heart and soul into it. How long did the actual writing take? 2 years?
About 3 years. Well, 2 years writing it, because it was COVID and I wasn't going out much anyway, so I had lots of time.
But I always thought of you as keeping yourself busy. Like you're always busy doing stuff. I actually see writing as being too slow for you, being too non-busy for you.
Well, I was doing a lot of other things, but I did write, and I should tell you that Blurred Vision has a sequel, which has been accepted for publication, called Corrected Vision.
Love it.
And after they got that, the publishers have asked for books 3 and 4, and I said, "Who knew I was writing a series?"
But that's unbelievable. Great.
Yeah.
Wait, tell us about who's a publisher and where we can get it.
The publisher is Red Adept Publishing, which is a nice independent publishing house. And how I got to them was because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted this novel to come out, and that is why it came out. I finished writing it. I think I sent it to one agent who turned it down, sent it to a second agent who asked for 10 pages and then turned it down. I sent it to a third agent who asked for the whole book and said she'd get back to me in about 3 months. In the interim, I read another book. I said, sure, fine. Read another book. And it was not my book, it wasn't these themes, but it had some of the same themes, and I saw that it was published by Red Adept. I Googled them, saw that they were willing to take unagented manuscripts with a query, so I queried them. And 6 weeks later, I had a book contract.
Wow.
And I said, sure.
Wow, that's
Sure.
great. So wait, so you're telling me your book, this is not just going to be in Judaica stores. You're going to be in Barnes & Noble as well.
It's in Barnes & Noble.
Beautiful.
As a matter of fact, I've been asked to give a number of talks at Barnes & Noble.
Great.
Which I'm very pleased about.
Okay. I didn't realize you're about to launch like a real national book tour, hopefully.
Yeah. They have it for Barnes & Noble. Interesting, among the groups that are very interested in the book are senior citizens residents. Takes place in the 80s, especially if they have a sizable number of Jewish residents. They're very happy to hear it, and I'm very happy to be talking about it.
And they were also raising their families at that time.
They were raising their families. Some of them, unfortunately, know people who had tragedies with this. They know people who... I know who they are, who some of these tragedies are, because I did all the work on them. Many of them you wouldn't know. It was. I mean, we all knew about things like Jim Jones,
sure,
which fortunately did not have any Jews that we know of. There may have been
but
some
there were a lot of people in that
involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
Scientology still has an institution in Jerusalem. We are all over. Not so many Frum Jews. We have other problems. I remember as I'm talking to Tuvi about it, who does a lot of work in this, Frum Jews don't tend to go into cults. Non-Frum Jews do.
Interesting. Is there I know it's fiction, but do you feel like, is there a message, a takeaway as well?
Yes, there is. The message that takes away is beware of what you are giving your children. There is no such thing as free lunch. You don't get away with anything. You can't say to me, we're not going to give our children a foundation, and they'll find their own, because unfortunately they may find their own with the villain in my book. Who can smell out the vulnerable. He can smell out the non-Jew who simply would like to be making more money and say, "Oh, I can help you. I'll make you rich beyond your dreams." You can smell out the public relations guy who's working like a dog for a casino. Who have told him one blunder and you're out of here, who don't realize how good he is and how much he's trying. And a Jewish kid who is alone, who wants to make a difference in the world, they get our best, they get our brightest, they get our most idealistic, not the Frum. Our kids have another place to put that idealism. And they usually have grown-ups from our community who are watching, because that's what we do. And as I said, they may go off the derech and they may do other things that could raise your hair, but they don't go believing that a Korean businessman is Mashiach ben David.
I like that message. Mazel tov on the book.
Thank you.
This is so nice. First of all, I'm looking forward to read. I'm looking forward to you giving me a copy.
I'm going to. Oh, we have. Okay. I have. You can get it on Blurred Vision. On Amazon.
There's a book site, Blurred Vision.
Blurred Vision is on Amazon.
What's the site? It's just type in Blurred Vision.
Go to Amazon. Type in Blurred Vision book or Blurred Vision.
Got it.
Susan Rosenbluth, and you'll get it. It's Kindle and it's in print. And I think there's going to be an audio book. They tell me is coming.
That's great.
And which I'm kind of excited about. And I think we're talking. I'm going to let the link know where I'm speaking locally, certainly, and I hope you'll come.
Send us pictures, by the way.
I will send you pictures.
But that's all good for the PR. We want to keep a drumbeat of Susie Rosenbluth, author, fiction novelist, with a message, with a higher message. So
right.
I want that.
And come and talk to me about it. It's open. I wrote recently. I think I had the article actually in the link when I said that I asked 3 things of my readers, especially in the times we live in. 1, always keep your eyes and ears open. We have to be very well aware of what's happening. 2, every single Jew should always have an up-to-date passport. Make sure your passport is in order, please. And 3rd, in the back of your mind, somewhere, start laying a framework for Plan B. I gave this as a talk recently, and I had a very sweet girl look at me and say, "But where would we go?" And I said, "To the moon. You'd go to moon. What do you mean, where would we go?" Baruch Hashem, we have Medina Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael. I'm very excited because Stein was it the public booksellers in Jerusalem, Steinmatzky has asked for the book.
That's great.
They want to sell it.
So you're going to be in Jerusalem.
We're going to be in Jerusalem.
Susie, this is so nice. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And please know, I'm a Jewish mother, and I shep such nachas every issue you put out.
Thank you.
You are wonderful. I love when people argue with you. My favorite was, I forgot somebody who made some kind of a stink about something that you didn't put in.
That often happens.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And they said something about freedom of the, where's my freedom of the press? And I said, no. Freedom of the press means that you have the right to invest, to open your own newspaper and write whatever you want. You don't have freedom of the links press.
I agree. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I 100% agree with you.
Of course.
Thank you. Okay. This is so nice. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news. And follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.